Welcome back to the Homes on Homes podcast. I'm Mike Holmes. I started this podcast to keep educating people on how to make it right, just like I've been doing for over 20 years on television. Here, you'll find raw, unscripted conversations with experts on building healthy homes, choosing quality products, safety at home, and more. Let's get started. Remember 2 years ago, I had two great guys in, and we were on my property cleaning up my pond because of this overgrowth of cattails, whatever you want to call those green things that come up with the brown top. I call them cattails. Since then, it has actually come back. So I have brought back Joe and Nick DeMarco from Weeds Begone, and we've already had a subject about this, and it's going in a direction that I think everyone needs to hear. Joe, Nick, great to see you, man.
Good to see you,
Nice
too.
to see you, Mike.
So, my cattails are coming back, and they really started late last year, and I'm going to explain why. My belief. The water was low all year. I don't think we had a lot of rain, and because the water was low in the pond, it really got stagnant, and they started growing again. So I'm starting to think about this going, okay, is this the reason because last year, or the possibility that we are just not getting enough rainwater? Well, this spring, we're getting a crap load of rainwater. My pond is full, and the cattails are really starting to grow again. So I want to get into this subject because in my mind, I started to think about storm water management. Natural waterways are just from heavy raining and creating a flood control system of where the water is going to go. And that's how over the billions of years on this planet, we've created rivers, etc. I live around farms. The water's going through, coming in, goes through my pond, continues down, ends up going down somewhere to Lake Ontario. By in the long run, that's where it ends up going because they all join together, get to the Rouge River, etc., other rivers that hit Lake Ontario. I don't think the solution is just coming back and again raking it again. I think I need to go into a different direction. What do you think that is?
So, Mike, what happens was, like you said, with the farm runoff, it's all the nutrients that's coming through the water, gets absorbed through pesticides that they use. They use a lot of stuff to keep their plants healthy and growing strong. A lot of the times when it rains, a lot of that will get absorbed into the water and go in through the pond, and then internally it gets absorbed into the sediments. So inside the ponds, you're getting an overloading of nutrients, which is feeding the weeds every year.
When you say nutrients, you're talking about farmland nutrients like they would put in for growing
That's
corn,
right.
etc.?
Yeah, to keep their plants healthy, they'll use those, and then they also use their manure in the springs, which is, you got a lot of bacteria in there, very rich in nutrients as well. So what they're using to keep their plants healthy and alive is getting absorbed in the water column. So when that water runs through the rivers and goes through certain ponds, it's called external loading. So externally, the ponds are getting loaded up with nutrients through the water quality itself.
So when I hear nutrients, I think about this, and the nutrients are coming off the farmland, coming into my pond. Wouldn't that be healthy for my pond?
So it depends on what kind of nutrients you're looking at. So the fertilizers from the farms, is meant for plant growth. So by getting lots of nutrients, there's different types of bacteria that you can get from plant growth. So there's anaerobic bacteria and aerobic bacteria that builds up in the bottoms of ponds. And what happens is as a pond gets left unmaintained, it will load up with nutrients. So there's different stages of ponds. So the first stage of a pond would be right when it gets dug out. You're going to have clean water, very low plant life. There's going to be, you're going to have clean and clear water. There's not a lot of nutrient load in the pond. As the years go on of the weeds, so what will happen is leaves will start to fall in the ponds. You'll get, you'll get wildlife that come in. They start to, use the pond. You get a lot of bacteria that builds up from what they leave behind from eating the plants and so on. That's what starts to fill in the bottom of these ponds, which gets a lot of nutrients that builds up. So once you start getting the growth in these ponds, normally happens about 2 or 3 years of unmaintaining a pond. You'll start to see your cattails starting to pop up. You'll start to see some vegetation growing in the bottom of the pond, which is, if left unmaintained over the winter months, these plants will die in these ponds. As the plants die in the pond, you're going to get what's called organic matter.
So it breaks down as sitting on the bottom.
That's right, just like your compost. So you have compost piles, you put your banana peels and your oranges into the compost, and it internally loads up with nutrients. So it's called internal loading. So externally, it gets nutrients from the farmlands, leaves, and everything that's falling into these ponds. And internally, as that stuff settles on the bottom, so over the winter, as the weeds will rot, it's called turnover. So as the water gets colder at the top, the water from the bottom starts to mix with the top water, and you're getting the unoxygenated water from the bottom mixing in with the top water. That's when you can start to see fish kills, start to see overloaded algae blooms will start to come around as in the springs. So the bottom
is
nutrients,
that the water turning green?
That's right.
Yeah.
So when the water starts to turn green, it's from the nutrients from the bottom getting released and it's coming up. So algae blooms are very harmful to not only humans, it's also harmful to pets and also the ecosystem as well. So as the ponds get left unmaintained, they start to die off. There's a certain process, or a certain terminology. It's called eutrophication. As the pond gets left alone with no maintenance, the pond starts to die.
So we have a dog next door, great little dog, and it's actually not a little dog, it's a big dog, and every chance she can, she goes ripping onto my property, dives into the pond.
Right.
She loves the pond. She's a freak for jumping in there. You're telling me this wouldn't be good for the dog, is that right?
So if there's the wrong type of algae in this pond, so over time, if the algae becomes blue-green, it's toxic to pets and humans. So it's actually very, very bad for the dogs to be using this water or the pond or waterfront property. If it starts to consume that water that's in this pond, it's actually toxic, this algae.
Okay, so now you've just opened up my imagination. I've got a lot of questions, but before I go in that direction, what I'm hearing from you, I need to oxygenate my pond. Is that it?
Absolutely. So what happens is you can cut and clean till the cows come home. However, by putting some oxygen in and treating with beneficial bacteria and enzymes is where you're going to be able to control your pond. So ponds without any help, they just become a mess. They become mosquito draws, and you need water movement, you need oxygen, and once we clean it, like we cleaned yours last time, what we need to do there is put some kind of oxygen into that pond. And by doing that, now you can actually maintain it. And
so it's not just the bags you put in, because we put in a bag of stuff that all I know it's a bag of stuff.
Right.
You dropped in a big bag, it was an expensive bag, and that was supposed to help do what?
go ahead.
So it reduces the muck levels at the bottom. So what gets left behind from the weeds that rot and everything over the winter, you get sediment that builds up, which is very rich in nutrients. So these treatments that we put into the ponds, beneficial bacteria and enzymes, sometimes we'll use pond dye to block the sunlight from getting down to the bottom, but they need a lot of oxygen to survive. So it's called aerobic bacteria. Anaerobic bacteria is what's building up in your pond right now. So there's a thermocline in the water. So at the bottom of these ponds, it's anoxic. There's not a lot of oxygen. So when stuff's rotting at the bottom, it's anaerobic bacteria starts to build up. So this bacteria is very bad for the ecosystem if it's left unmaintained for so long. So what we do with the oxygenated water is we'll eliminate anaerobic bacteria by oxygenating the bottom of the pond.
So you're talking just like a fish tank. Let's think about
That's
this.
right.
If a fish tank goes untreated, the bubbles aren't going in the water.
Exactly.
The fish tank goes green, the fish die, and we're left with a stinky smell.
Right.
I had a fish tank once.
Yep.
I don't
Yeah.
ever want it again. It was a pain in my rear.
That's right. So that's how I explain it, Mike, all the time. Is so for an easy way of explaining the situation, if you got a fish tank, there's a reason why there's a little bubbler in the bottom of the fish tank, and the treatments that you will put in the fish tank are keeping the bacteria levels down, and it's also keeping the water clean and clear, so it's not getting algae, because the algae is actually harmful to some fish and wildlife as well. So just like a fish tank, you need to oxygenate the bottom, circulating the water, and what it also does is it breaks the thermocline. So thermocline is, have you ever been swimming in a lake and you go past this thing?
I got my diver's license.
So they explain
when I
it
went down, I
sometimes
got
they
the cold zone.
And what they'll say is, oh, wow, I just hit a cold spring. So it's often mistaken as a spring, but normally it's the thermocline. Anything underneath that water is unoxygenated water. You're going to get the anaerobic bacteria at the bottom. So anything above that is actually normally pretty healthy water. Normally you got a lot of oxygen in the top water due to movement of the waves. You get your boats that come through. But once you get down to the bottom of these ponds and lakes, you get that bad bacteria. So when stuff rots at the bottom of the ponds, you get methane gas, hydrogen sulfide, which is built up in the muck. So
that's Mother Nature.
It's called internal loading. This gas is building up from the rotting process in the bottom. And we eliminate these gases by oxygenating the bottom of the ponds and lakes. And we eliminate what's called anaerobic bacteria, and we introduce these engineered enzymes and beneficial bacteria that eats the muck from the bottom of these ponds and lakes, that keeps the muck levels down and keeps the nutrient level at a medium. So you need to have a proper balance in your pond, in your lakes, just like you have in your pools and in your fish tanks. So you got a pool, you got water in it, you got no pump and you got no movement, the water's gonna go green and the water's not gonna be clear. Same thing in your fish tank. So everything in the world needs to be maintained. Most of the time people will dig a pond and they pretty much get left for death when there's no aeration system. If there's no fountain, if there's no movement in that water, it's stagnant. Bad bacteria will start to build up over the years of not maintaining that pond.
See, this is really logical to me, and we're gonna solve the problems with my pond, but it's not just the pond, because this has opened up my mind big time. If you like the show, check out the episode page on makeitright.ca for more tips. Listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Amazon Music. Subscribe so you don't miss an episode.